ready to unearth Egypt's deepest secrets? From hidden chambers inside Tutankhamun's tomb to the elusive labyrinth of Hawara, legends speak of untold treasures, lost pharaohs, and ancient curses waiting to be discovered. Starting this list off today in our number 10 spot, we have the Tomb of Herihor. Amidst the towering columns and sacred halls of the Karnak temple complex, the elusive Tomb of Herihor continues to captivate historians. Herihor was no ordinary figure. Originally a high priest of the Amun, he boldly declared himself pharaoh during Egypt's tumultuous Third Intermediate Period. Yet, despite his audacious rise to power, little evidence of his burial site has ever been found. Some speculate that his tomb could be hidden within a secret chamber of Karnak itself, filled with treasures and inscriptions that chronicle a time of political intrigue and religious upheaval. Others wonder if his final resting place was deliberately concealed to protect his legacy from rivals. The discovery of Herihor's tomb could unlock a treasure trove of artifacts and scrolls, shedding light on a shadowy chapter of Egyptian history. As each new expedition delves into the ancient ruins, the possibility of unearthing this lost tomb adds a layer of excitement and mystery. Could the next turn of a dusty corridor finally reveal the secrets of the self-made pharaoh who dared to redefine his destiny? In our number 9 spot today, we have the Lost Labyrinth of Egypt at Hawara. Hidden beneath the sands near the Fayum oasis, the Lost Labyrinth of Egypt at Hawara remains one of the most tantalizing mysteries of the ancient world. Described by historians like Herodotus as a colossal underground complex with thousands of rooms and winding passages, it's said to have rivaled even the grandeur of the pyramids. While archaeologists have uncovered some remnants that hint at its existence, the labyrinth itself remains largely unexplored and unopened. Legends speak of vast halls adorned with hieroglyphs that could unlock secrets of forgotten dynasties, or perhaps even chambers guarding untold treasures and mystical artifacts. Some theories suggest it was designed as a giant puzzle intended to protect sacred knowledge from falling into the wrong hands. The mere thought that such an architectural marvel lies waiting to be rediscovered definitely ignites the imagination. Could the Lost Labyrinth be the key to unraveling mysteries that have eluded us for millennia? In our number 8 spot today, we have the Big Void in the Great Pyramid of Giza. Hidden within the towering limestone blocks of the Great Pyramid of Giza, there is a massive unexplored cavity known as the Big Void. Discovered in 2017 through the innovated use of muon radiography, a technique that detects particles from cosmic rays, the void sits mysteriously above the Grand Gallery. Its sheer size suggests it wasn't an accidental space or a simple architectural flaw. Could it be a secret chamber built to house untold treasures or sacred texts from a bygone era? Some speculate it might even be a concealed passageway designed to protect the pharaoh's journey to the afterlife. The lack of access points has kept this mystery sealed off from the world, fueling countless theories and a sense of wonder. As we stand on the brink of new technological breakthroughs, the possibility of uncovering what lies within the Big Void keeps the world eagerly watching Egypt's ancient sands. In our number 7 spot today, we have the hidden chambers of Tutankhamun's tomb. Nestled deep within the Valley of the Kings, Tutankhamun's tomb has dazzled the world ever since its discovery in 1922, but recent radar scans have reignited the excitement by hinting at hidden chambers adjacent to the young pharaoh's burial site. Some archaeologists speculate that these secret rooms could be the untouched resting place of Queen Nefertiti, one of ancient Egypt's most mysterious figures. The possibility of uncovering new treasures and untold stories has the archaeological community buzzing. Could these concealed chambers hold the key to mysteries that have puzzled historians for decades? As technology advances, the anticipation builds, and the sands of Egypt may yet reveal more of their timeless secrets. In our number 6 spot today, we have the Tomb of Imhotep. Deep within the ancient sands of Saqqara lies one of Egypt's most captivating mysteries, the undiscovered Tomb of Imhotep. Known as the brilliant architect who designed the Step Pyramid, the world's first colossal stone structure, Imhotep was so revered that he was deified after death, a rare honor bestowed upon few mortals. Yet, despite his monumental impact on history, his burial site has never been found. Archaeologists speculate that unearthing his tomb could reveal groundbreaking insights into Old Kingdom Egypt, possibly containing ancient scrolls detailing the origins of pyramid construction or medicinal texts that predate modern knowledge. Some even whisper about hidden chambers filled with artifacts that could rewrite everything we know about ancient engineering. The quest to find his tomb isn't just about locating a lost grave, it's a race to uncover secrets that have been buried for over 4 millennia. In our number 5 spot today, we have the lost tomb of Cleopatra and Mark Antony. Somewhere along the sun-soaked shores near Alexandria, or hidden beneath the ancient ruins of Taposiris Magna, lies the elusive tomb of Cleopatra and Mark Antony, cloaked in legend and intrigue. As Egypt's last pharaoh and her Roman lover, their dramatic love story ended in tragedy, and their final resting place has become one of history's most tantalizing mysteries. Archaeologists have been chasing whispers and deciphering clues from ancient texts, believing that uncovering this tomb could reveal artifacts of immense historical significance, perhaps even scrolls penned by Cleopatra herself. Some speculate the tomb could be an underground palace filled with treasures that surpass even those in King Tut's burial chamber. The very idea that beneath the shifting sands lies a sealed crypt holding the final secrets of these iconic lovers keeps the world watching Egypt with bated breath. Could the next spade of Earth finally unveil the hidden chapter of this epic saga? In our number 4 spot today, we have the tomb of Alexander the Great. Beneath the vibrant streets of modern Alexandria, whispers of a hidden tomb ignite the imaginations of archaeologists and treasure hunters. The lost resting place of Alexander the Great. After his death, it's said his body was brought back to Egypt, a land he admired and where he was proclaimed a pharaoh. Over centuries, the exact location of his tomb has been swallowed by time, earthquakes, and rising sea levels. Some speculate it could be concealed beneath ancient ruins or submerged under the harbor, waiting to unveil secrets of the Hellenistic era. Finding this tomb wouldn't just be an archaeological coup, it could potentially unearth artifacts or writings that reshape our understanding of history. The allure of unlocking such a monumental mystery keeps the world watching as each passing year holds the tantalizing possibility that Alexander's legendary tomb might finally be found. In our number 3 spot today, we have the underground chambers beneath the Sphinx. Deep beneath the stoic visage of the Great Sphinx on the Giza Plateau, tales of hidden chambers and secret tunnels abound. For centuries, locals and adventurers have whispered about what might lie beneath this ancient guardian of the pyramids. Geological surveys have revealed anomalies, unexplained voids and cavities that suggest the possibility of underground rooms or passageways. Some believe these spaces could house lost treasures or ancient texts detailing the mysteries of the pharaohs. Others speculate about connections to the mythical Hall of Records, a legendary repository of wisdom from a bygone era. The risk of damaging the Sphinx has kept these secrets locked away, as no confirmed entrances have been found to explore them. The allure of what might be concealed beneath these colossal paws continues to captivate the world. Could unlocking these chambers alter our understanding of history itself? In our number 2 spot today, we have the burial chamber of Pharaoh Amenhotep I. Hidden somewhere within the winding corridors and secret chambers of the Valley of the Kings lies one of Egypt's most enduring mysteries, the lost burial chamber of Pharaoh Amenhotep I. Despite decades of tireless excavation and exploration, archaeologists have yet to uncover his final resting place. This pharaoh ruled during a transformative period of the 18th dynasty, and his untouched tomb could be a gold mine of ancient treasures and forgotten texts. Some believe it might contain scrolls that detail the earliest practices of mummification, or even maps to other undiscovered tombs. There's talk of hidden passageways sealed by elaborate traps designed to protect his legacy from tomb robbers of the past and the present. The allure of finding finding Amenhotep I's tomb isn't just about unearthing riches, it's about unlocking a pivotal chapter in Egyptian history that could redefine what we know about this ancient civilization. Could the next strike of the pickaxe finally reveal the secrets that have been buried for a millennia? And finally, in our number 1 spot today, we have the unopened tombs in the Valley of the Kings. Deep within the sun-baked cliffs of the Valley of the Kings in Luxor, several mysterious tombs lie untouched, sealed since ancient times. Detected by modern technology like ground-penetrating radar, these hidden chambers remain inaccessible due to unstable rock formations and the challenges they pose. Some archaeologists speculate that these tombs could belong to lesser-known pharaohs or influential nobles whose names have been lost to history. Others whisper about the possibility of secret cults or even undiscovered dynasties concealed within. The allure is irresistible. What if these unopened tombs house untold treasures, sacred artifacts, or scrolls that could rewrite our understanding of Egyptian civilization? Each day, the desert sands shift slightly as if guarding these secrets a little longer. The anticipation builds. Could the next archaeological breakthrough finally unlock these silent chambers and the mysteries that they hold?
To start us off today, we have the cursed tomb of King Tut. It was discovered in the early 1920s in the Valley of the Kings, an ancient Egyptian burial ground that dates all the way back to 16th century BC. The tomb was originally discovered by Howard Carter, a British archaeologist, alongside Lord George Carnarvon. It was a massive find that generated a ton of publicity worldwide, but it was soon revealed that the tomb had been protected by a curse. That stated, anyone who dare disturb King Tut's burial site would meet their end shortly after. And of course, this turned out to be true. Shortly after he first laid eyes on the tomb, Lord George died of BLOOD. In the years following, many members of the excavation team working with King Tut's tomb, as well as those involved in the proceedings of the discovery, began dropping like flies, with no reasonable explanation other than the fact that they were, of course, cursed. Among the deceased was Arthur Mace, excavator killed by arsenic in 1928, Richard Bethel, Howard Carter's secretary, smothered to death in his sleep, and Douglas Reed, who had x-rayed the tomb and inexplicably died in 1924. Somehow, Howard Carter was able to walk away from the event relatively unscathed. He died 19 years later from Hodgkin's lymphoma at the age of 64. Whether or not that has anything to do with the curse, I will leave up to you.
Next up is the curse of King Casimir. King Casimir of Poland was a powerful figure. He ruled from 1447 to 1492 when he died, and for centuries his tomb sat completely undisturbed. Until 1973, a team of archaeologists opened the tomb during renovations of the Holy Cross Chapel. When King Casimir's tomb was opened, they found decaying wooden coffins with the remains of Casimir and his wife Elizabeth of Austria inside. After restoration work, they were reinterred, but soon a number of archaeologists who were in the 12-person team started getting sick. And then they started to die. In total, 10 out of the 12 died prematurely in the following months. Rumors began to spread about the tomb being cursed, but was it just a coincidence, or was it really King Casimir's tomb that caused these people to die? Yeah, it was the tomb. A microbiologist investigating the case soon discovered that there had been fungus filling the tomb, which released toxic substances into the air known as aflatoxins. Inhaling them can cause liver problems as well as cancer. So in a way, the tomb really was cursed, just not in the traditional sense.
Next up, we have the Amenhotep tomb curse. Like King Tut's tomb, the Amenhotep tomb was discovered in the Valley of Kings in Egypt, but this one was found all the way back in 1898. Along the side of the tomb, there was an inscription written warning trespassers not to disturb the sleeping king inside of the tomb. Well, as you probably guessed, 2 years ago they disturbed him anyways, and in doing so they discovered something strange. While most mummies have their brains removed during the embalming process, this one did not. In fact, its brain was fully intact, which is super crazy. Also found in the x-rays was around 30 amulets wrapped up within the body and a belt covered in gold beads. So now let's go back to the curse, which states that anyone who is bold enough to steal from the tomb will not only lose their earthly wealth, but will also drown at sea, be burnt to death in a fiery furnace, starve to death, bear no offspring, and receive no funeral. Along with that, it says the perpetrator's bones will also perish, insinuating a rather unpleasant afterlife. So you're cursed in life, you're cursed in death. I wouldn't go near this. Straight and to the point, I'm really hoping that no one on the excavation team is a kleptomaniac, because I feel like this guy's tomb is the last place you'd want to steal from after hearing all that, but to each their own, I guess.
Next on the list is the Karun treasure. So this collection of Lydian artifacts was held in the New York Metropolitan Museum of Art from 1987 to 1993 until it was all returned to Turkey when it was revealed that the artifacts had been purchased from robbers knowingly. The treasure was found in the tomb of a Lydian princess in Usak province. A team of 3 grave robbers dug for days and then blew through the marble masonry of the chamber door with dynamite. The robbers made off with the treasure, but their lives would change for the worse. One man lost 3 of his daughters and sons. All died violent deaths. One man ended up being paralyzed in an accident, and the wife of the 3rd robber left him after his son took his own life. So, was the tomb of the Lydian princess cursed? Or do people desperate enough to dynamite their way into an ancient tomb for money probably have rocky lives to begin with? Share your thoughts down below.
Next up, we have the mastabas at Saqqara. Mastabas meaning rectangular Egyptian tomb consisting of an underground burial chamber with rooms above. Saqqara being a necropolis in Egypt, which is basically just a massive burial ground. More than 160 mastabas tombs have been found in Saqqara, and while some are relatively basic, some are a little more foreboding. In particular would have to be the mastabas of Kentika Ikaki, which is inscribed with the words, "As for all men who shall enter this, my tomb impure, there will be judgment, an end shall be made for him. I shall seize his neck like a bird. I shall cast the fear of myself into him." That's pretty specific and unique, I suppose. Many other of the mastabas on the ground hold curses, but none quite like that. The most commonly seen curse in Saqqara would most likely be the one that invokes the anger of the god of reckoning and reads, "Cursed be those who disturb the rest of a pharaoh. They that shall break the seal of this tomb shall meet death by disease that no doctor can diagnose." Nice.
The tomb of Timur. Timur was a Turco-Mongol conqueror and warlord, founder of the Timurid Empire. He died in 1405 and was buried in present-day Uzbekistan. In 1740, a man named Nadir Shah attempted to break into the tomb. He ended up breaking the sarcophagus and took a jade slab from it. But his son then fell severely ill. Shah returned the stolen slab and miraculously, his son recovered. Now cut to June of 1941, and Soviet anthropologists led by Mikhail Gerasimov under Stalin's orders set out to open the tomb to confirm if it truly was the tomb of Timur. They'd been warned that the tomb was cursed, but they proceeded anyway. Once the tomb seal was broken, a foul odor filled the air, and just 2 days after it had been opened, Germany attacked the Soviet Union. Stalin, informed of the events, ordered Timur's remains to be returned to Samarkand to receive a reburial with Islamic rites. And just 2 weeks after the reburial, the Red Army achieved a major victory at the Battle of Stalingrad, a turning point in World War II.
Next up, we have yet another tomb found in the Saqqara necropolis of Egypt. Guys, when I said this was a massive burial ground, I meant it. The tomb of Hezi, while not a mastaba, can also be found in the area. And perhaps what sets this particular curse apart from any others is the fact that it does not only condemn those who dare to disturb the lying pharaoh, but it actually condemns the pharaoh himself, should he be disturbed. The inscription on the side of the tomb of Hezi reads, "As for anyone who will enter this tomb after he has eaten abominations or after he has copulated with a woman, I will be judged with him in the council of the great God." Seems strange to stake your afterlife on the actions of modern day architects, the studs of the science world, but hey, may God strike you down, I guess.
Next on the list, we have the curse of Colonel Buck's tomb. Jonathan Buck, born in 1719 in Haverhill, Massachusetts, was a justice of the peace and legend has it that he ordered a witch to be burnt at the stake. The witch put a curse on him, saying that his tomb would be stained with her mark for all eternity. As she burned in this fire, one of her legs rolled out onto the ground. Colonel Buck died in 1795, but it wasn't until 1870 that a monument was erected to him, and on that monument is a strange mark, almost resembling a woman's lower leg. And with every attempt to wash it off or even replace the tombstone entirely, it just keeps reappearing. Eerie, but kind of a lame curse. I mean, I don't know, I wouldn't care if you drew a leg on my tombstone better than being cursed to die a horrible death, or my entire bloodline being cursed for eternity. Plus, it doesn't even take effect till after I'm already dead. I don't know, this witch, I don't think she was dangerous enough to be burned alive.
Next up, we have the cursed tomb of King Ahiram. The tomb was unearthed in 1923 during an excavation that took place in the ancient Phoenician city of Byblos. The tombs were revealed after a rainstorm had caused the collapse of a hill, which revealed a total of 9 rock-cut limestone tombs dating all the way back to 1000 BC, one of which belonged to none other than the mysterious King Ahiram. What makes him so mysterious? Well, other than the record of his name being carved into the tomb, no one had actually ever heard of him before. What's stranger still is the fact that along with the king's name, a curse had been inscribed onto the side of the tomb as well. The curse reads, "If any king or governor or army commander exposes this coffin, then let his judicial scepter be broken, let his royal throne be overthrown, let a vagabond efface his inscription." Well, lucky for those who made the discovery, they were not kings, governors, or army commanders, but archaeologists rather. The origin of the tomb, or the other 8 found at the site, are unknown, but evidence does suggest that they came from Syria, which makes sense given that they were found in Lebanon and they are quite close in proximity.
And we're finishing off the list with Serenput I's tomb. Serenput I was the leader of the Elephantine during the 12th dynasty. When archaeologists explored his tomb, they found an inscription warning against anyone who attempts to take any of the offerings inside it, saying, "His arm shall be cut off like that of this bull, his neck shall be twisted off like that of a bird, his office shall not exist, the position of his son shall not exist, his house shall not exist in Nubia, his tomb shall not exist in the necropolis, his god shall not accept his white bread, his flesh shall belong to the fire, his children shall belong to the fire, his corpse shall not be to the ground, I shall be against him as a crocodile on the water, as a serpent on earth, and as an enemy in the necropolis." Now that is a warning. One of the creepiest tombs you'll find in Egypt is the tomb of Amenhotep, located in the famous Valley of the Kings. Inside, there's a chilling inscription meant to keep anyone from messing with the tomb, a warning to anyone who dares to disturb the king's resting place. The inscription lays out some pretty terrifying consequences for anyone who tries to steal or disturb it. They'll lose all their earthly wealth, drown at sea, be burnt alive in a fiery furnace, and be cursed to die without any heirs or a proper burial. Not sure what losing all your money really matters if you're gonna drown and somehow die in a fire, but then again, the timeline of these events is an outline, so maybe you'll be poor for years before getting set on fire, then hopping into some water to try and put yourself out, only to suddenly remember that you can't swim. If that's not enough though, the inscription warns that your bones will rot away. Again, improper burial. This was a very big deal in ancient Egypt. The Sheki Abd el-Qurna is an ancient burial site in Thebes, now Luxor, known for its tombs and a decidedly eerie atmosphere. As a necropolis, it's filled with tombs, and a lot of them come with creepy warnings meant to scare off tomb raiders. One of these warnings is found on a stone slab that's now on display at the National Museum of Scotland. The inscription reads, "Watch out not to take a pebble from within it outside. If you find this stone, you shall not transgress against it. Indeed, the gods, since the time of Pre, those who rest in the mountains gain strength every day, even though their pebbles are dragged away." Basically, it's telling anyone who dares to touch or remove even a small little stone from the tomb that they'll anger both the gods and the spirits of the dead and face their wrath. So imagine what would happen if you took a whole mummy. My only question is, what happens if you get a rock in your shoe or something and you just leave without knowing? Does the curse count if you take something away accidentally. As for all men who shall enter this, my tomb impure, I shall seize his neck like a bird. That's what's said on the mastaba of Katika Akeki. Mastabas are a type of tomb with a flat-roofed structure that were commonly used for burials. In Saqqara, there are over 160 of these tombs, many of which contain mummies. Not every tomb has spooky inscriptions, but some certainly do, messages that make it very clear what happens if you try to loot them. Archaeologists have found colorful hieroglyphics in some of these tombs, and according to a professor from the American University in Cairo, these warnings are serious. Anyone deemed impure who enters one of these tombs is condemned to a punishment from the gods. Part of the inscription on Ikaki's tomb, warning about the gods seizing your neck like a bird, is pretty cut and dry. Mess with the tomb, your life will suck and you'll probably die a brutal, painful death. Enkhtifi was an ancient Egyptian nomarch, which means he was a regional governor, and this was around 2100 BCE. He was also a military commander. He might not have been a full-on pharaoh, but he was still pretty important, and he wasn't about to leave his tomb unprotected. This guy, like many ancient Egyptians, took his afterlife very seriously, and he made sure anyone thinking of messing with his tomb would regret it. On the walls of his tomb, Enkhtifi left a pretty ominous warning. Basically says that if any ruler, or anyone, really disturbed his tomb, they'd be rejected by Hemen, a falcon god associated with the afterlife. Now, if this wasn't enough of a curse, he also declared that the heirs of anyone who tried to loot his tomb would lose their inheritance. So not only would you face the wrath of the gods, but your family would lose everything as well. Now, while this inscription might not have stopped modern-day archaeologists from digging up the tomb, it definitely worked on the ancient tomb robbers. The inscription seems to have done its job because there's no sign that anyone dared to loot Enkhtifi's tomb back in the day. The roof collapsed at one point and ended up being fixed in the 20th century, but the damage wasn't caused intentionally, and even then, most of the place is still intact. Harkuf was an ancient Egyptian explorer and governor of Upper Egypt during the 6th dynasty. He made sure to leave behind a pretty ominous warning for anyone who might try to disturb his peace in the afterlife. In his tomb, Harkuf left an inscription that mainly talks about his experiences and hopes for his journey into the afterlife, but then he adds a message for anyone daring enough to step into his tomb. The inscription reads, "As for any man who shall enter into this tomb, I will seize him like a wild fowl. He shall be judged by the great God." Now, at first, it might not sound like the scariest curse, but when you dig into ancient Egyptian beliefs, it's actually pretty terrifying, and the age of the pyramids being cursed by the great god was very serious. The great god, often associated with Osiris, the god of the afterlife, had the power to condemn a soul for eternity. So being judged negatively by him was pretty much the worst thing that could happen to anyone back then. The tomb of Ankh-Amor in Saqqara, like many tombs in the area, is protected by a curse. And this curse is definitely one you don't want to mess with. The inscription in his tomb says, "As for that which anyone might do against this my tomb, the same will be done to his property. I am an excellent priest, knowledgeable in secret spells and all forms of magic, and as for anyone who enters my tomb impure or who does not purify themselves, I shall seize him like a goose and fill him with the fear at seeing ghosts upon the earth." I really like this one. Instead of the gods judging you, he'll be dealing with you himself, and he knows magic, which is pretty scary. He's a mummy wizard. Senenmut was a high priest and the royal advisor to Queen Hatshepsut, one of Egypt's most powerful pharaohs. Some even speculate that they were more than just political partners, that they were also getting it on. While we can't say for sure what their relationship really was, Senenmut was a pretty important guy. After he died, his tomb was built right next to the queen's, and even closer to her pharaoh's tomb. This was a big deal. It was a huge honor to be buried so close to royalty. It's led to some beliefs that Senenmut's status may have had something to do with some behind-the-scenes politics, or maybe something a little more personal. When archaeologists uncovered his tomb, though, they found it in remarkable condition and also uncovered something a little less welcoming, a curse. The inscription on the tomb reads, "His lifetime shall not exist on earth." Not the fanciest curse, but it is blunt. It's quick and to the point. The tomb of Hezi is also located in Saqqara, one of Egypt's most famous burial sites, and it holds the remains of a nobleman from the Old Kingdom. Like many tombs, the hieroglyphic inscriptions on the walls start by telling the story of Hezi's life, and that's an interesting thing to mention. A lot of what we know about high-ranking members of ancient Egyptian society comes from the inscriptions on their tombs. We get to learn a lot about who they were, what they did, but anyway, on to the curse. After the usual biographical stuff, we get a warning which says, "As for anyone who will enter this tomb after he has eaten abominations, or after he has copulated with woman, I will be judged with him in the council of the great God." So this one's a little bit strange. Not only does it threaten those who disturb the tomb, but it also seems to involve Hezi himself in the judgment. Basically, if you've done anything deemed impure before entering, Hezi will be right there facing judgment alongside you. He's kind of playing to like your sympathy a little bit, you know, like don't mess with it. I don't want to get in trouble along with you. You don't want to mess with a curse that involves not just you, but also the guy resting there. I mean, that's not fair. Serenput I was a leader from Elephantine during Egypt's 12th dynasty, and it seems he was serious about protecting the offerings placed in his tomb. To make sure no one messed with the sacred gifts left for the gods, he left probably the most intense warning out of any on this list, saying that anyone thinking about taking anything from the tomb will have their arm cut off, neck twisted off like a bird, his office shall not exist, the position of his son shall not exist, his house shall not exist in Nubia, his tomb shall not exist in the necropolis, his god shall not accept his white bread, his flesh will belong to the fire, his children shall belong to the fire as well, his corpse shall not be to the ground, I shall be against him as a crocodile in the water, as a serpent on earth, and as an enemy in the necropolis. Just a very aggressive message. To put it simply, everything bad you can think of will happen to you if you mess with this tomb. From losing your arm and neck to your entire family line being wiped out, and not just in this life. Now, we couldn't do this list without talking about the most famous ancient Egyptian curse in existence, the so-called Curse of King Tut. The idea of cursed tombs became a well-known thing in the West after the 1922 opening of Tutankhamun's tomb by British archaeologist Howard Carter. It all started with the death of Lord Carnarvon, who funded the excavation. He died shortly after the tomb was opened, reportedly from an infected mosquito bite. But then all these rumors started to spread that it was because of King Tut, that his tomb was cursed, with the media sensationalizing the idea that anyone who disturbed the tomb would face dire consequences. A lot of the curse stories came from all these sensational reports, like one where a cobra symbolizing Egypt's royal power killed Carter's pet canary. People took this as a bad omen that the spirit of Tut was striking down intruders, but most of the curse claims have been debunked. Studies showed that Lord Carnarvon's death was caused by a bacterial infection, not any supernatural forces, and in fact only a small number of people associated with this tomb's discovery died young or under any unusual circumstances. Carter himself, who is a skeptic of the curse, lived another 17 years, dying of lymphoma in 1939. Most others, like Carnarvon's daughter, Lady Evelyn Herbert, lived long lives well into old age. But it's still a really fun idea and a fun urban legend and story.
Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have KV55. This is a tomb that is referred to by a number rather than a name because we don't actually know who lies inside of the tomb. While this tomb had its modern discovery in 1907, we still haven't quite found the answers surrounding this mystery. To make things a little more eerie, while the walls of the actual tomb are bare, which is bizarre, as you walk down the steps towards the tomb, you'll notice that there are some markings leading up to it. You'll see inscribed on the wall of the entrance the words which can be translated to, quote, "The evil one shall not live again." If this wasn't enough to give you an unsettling feeling, the coffin inside of the tomb has been desecrated, with part of the face having been removed as well. So all in all, we don't know a lot about what's going on down there, but it doesn't seem good. In our number 9 spot today, we have Chapter 17. Archaeologists had a large and very exciting discovery as the 4,200-year-old funerary temple of Queen Nerit, who was the wife of the pharaoh Teti, was found. The recently excavated Soraka necropolis was stocked full of incredible treasures. Inside there were over 50 wooden sarcophagi, there was a board game, a riverboat with rowers, statues, wooden masks, a shrine dedicated to the god of the dead Anubis, and there was a burial sanctuary dedicated to the queen. And while all of these are truly unbelievable finds, one of the most fascinating to researchers was a scroll from the Book of the Dead. The 13-foot-long papyrus scroll, which is referred to as Chapter 17 of the Book of the Dead, acts as a chilling guide to the afterlife. In our number 8 spot today we have golden tongues. A team was working at a temple on the outskirts of the Egyptian city Alexandria when they discovered 16 burials in rock-cut tombs. It was here that they found some mummies that unfortunately had been poorly preserved over the last 2,000 years, but it was what they found with these mummies that was exceptionally interesting. Inside a few of the mummies' mouths were golden tongues nestled inside of their jawbones. It is thought that the dead were given these gold foil amulets that were shaped like tongues so that they could speak before the court of the god Osiris in the afterlife. Osiris is the god of fertility, agriculture, the afterlife, the dead, resurrection, life, and vegetation, and he was also the judge of the dead, so it is imperative that those headed to the afterlife impress him. When we break it down and understand why these gold tongues might have been placed with the bodies, it becomes less of a horrifying discovery and more of an absolutely fascinating one. In our number 6 spot today we have Marcus. Inside the necropolis of Porto Sarno, which was found in the ancient Roman city of Pompeii, a tomb was found which held the remains of Marcus Venerius Secundio, and these remains are the best preserved ones ever found in ruins. The partially mummified remains included hair and bones and even a partial ear, and they belonged to Marcus, who was a former slave who was able to rise through the ranks. This discovery was unusual because tests showed that Marcus died around the age of 60, and during Roman times adults were usually cremated. After being freed from slavery, Marcus was able to join a college of priests who were in charge of a form of emperor worship. Being buried inside of a tomb is a reflection of the fact that when he passed, he was in good social and economic standing. It is believed that this tomb dates back decades before the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 AD destroyed Pompeii. In our number 5 spot today we have Tomb Storeroom. During the excavations of a 2,600-year-old vast necropolis that sits just south of Cairo, researchers unearthed a tomb, of course, or else why would I be talking about it right now? But here's the thing about this specific tomb. It had a storeroom that was housing about 24 mummies. The tomb was located at the bottom of a 36 feet deep shaft, and the 22 mummies were found along the tomb walls. The mummies are believed to date back to 640 BC during the 26th dynasty, which was Egypt's last independent kingdom. Many of the mummies were unfortunately poorly preserved, so their identities as well as the reason why so many were put into one room is left as a bit of a mystery. In our number 4 spot today we have a Bronze Age tomb. Imagine you're a farmer in Ireland and one day you're just minding your own business and somehow manage to stumble upon an ancient tomb that's basically been untouched for thousands of years. Well, that's pretty much exactly what happened when a burial site was uncovered on southwest Ireland's Dingle Peninsula. Inside this site, researchers found human bones along with items that may give us some insights into prehistoric burial and death rituals. This tomb is believed to date back to the Bronze Age, but unlike other tombs from the time, this one was completely underground, which means that it may be even older than once suspected. The tomb was found during some land improvement work when literally a stone was turned over and it revealed the chamber underneath. In our number 3 spot today we have mice. A couple years ago in 2019, as archaeologists were searching through a well-preserved and beautifully painted tomb that had been found in the Egyptian town of Sohag, the tomb is thought to be from around 2,000 years ago and was built for a man named Tutu and his wife. Other than the human mummies that were found inside of this tomb, researchers also found animal mummies, including dozens of mummified mice. This tomb is one of 7 that were found in the area after authorities found smugglers digging illegally for artifacts, which honestly sounds like it should be the plot of a movie. While I'm sure these kinds of discoveries are insanely important and helpful for all kinds of researchers, finding dozens of mummified animals along with human mummies probably isn't the nicest discovery there's ever been. In our number 2 spot today we have a gibbon skull. Gibbons are a type of ape that are often characterized by their swinging ability coupled with their loud, bright calls, and the 8th century Chinese poet Li Bai described their voices as they swung past the Yangtze River. But here's the thing. Today, there are no gibbons that live anywhere near the river. Also, the gibbons that exist now have different fur patterns from the ones that are often depicted in classical Chinese paintings. This has led experts to believe that there must have been another kind of gibbon that has now vanished, and physical evidence of this kind of gibbon might have turned up in the most unexpected place: a tomb. This tomb, which was built for the grandmother of the first emperor of China nearly 2,300 years ago, contained a skull and a jawbone so distinct that scientists believe they must belong to this member of the now extinct gibbon genus. Many surviving gibbon species are now facing extinction, so it is likely that there were others in the past who unfortunately faced the same kind of fate. In our number 1 spot today, we have canopic jars. This is a discovery that is actually quite a common find in tombs, but that doesn't make it a pleasant one, although there is a reasonable explanation behind this. Canopic jars are often found in tombs, and in 2018, in the tomb of Carabaskin, which was found on the west bank of Luxor, there were some well-preserved jars found. The jars were made of Egyptian alabaster, and they most likely held viscera. That's right, folks, these jars usually held the organs of the person inside of the tomb. They were used during the mummification process in order to store and preserve the organs so that they could be used in the afterlife. There wasn't just one jar, but rather a jar for specific organs. While in modern times this is a gruesome discovery, it's also absolutely fascinating to see how people of the past cared for those who have passed away, as well as seeing how strong the belief in the afterlife used to be. Starting off this list, in our number 10 spot, we have a black granite sarcophagus. In 2018, archaeologists in Egypt found a massive black granite sarcophagus in Alexandria, Egypt, that dated all the way back to 2,000 years ago. Rumors immediately started swirling about what this sarcophagus might have contained, but the best way to find out? Well, you have to open it, of course. Instead of some crazy curse being unleashed, the first thing that escaped this tomb when opened was a horrible, unbearable smell. Apparently it was so bad that the site had to be evacuated for a while before they could return to finish opening it up. When they finally were able to completely lift the lid, they found a red-brown-like sewage water flooding the bottom, which is likely where that horrible smell was coming from. Other than all that gross stuff, inside the sarcophagus were the bones of 3 people. Unfortunately, the mummies did not end up being well preserved, so only the skeletal remains were still intact. It is believed that the people inside may have been soldiers from the time of pharaohs. This is believed because one of the skulls had a crack in it from an arrow. There was a bust found along with the tomb, but unfortunately due to time past, it has been weathered beyond recognition, but that is not the only way researchers can find out where the soldiers are from and what time period they lived in. In our number 9 spot today, we have the knife-armed man. In 2018, while researchers were excavating a 1,200 to 1,400 year old necropolis in northern Italy, they made a gruesome discovery that led to us learning a super interesting story of someone who lived all those years ago. Inside this necropolis there were the remains of a man, but what set him apart from the others is that he had a knife blade prosthetic arm. Further analysis of his bones showed that his arm had been removed via blunt force trauma. Normally all those years ago the wounds would have killed you, if not from the blood loss then from infection, because of course this was a time before antibiotics, but somehow this man managed to survive it all, and in doing that he made himself the scariest prosthetic limb I've ever heard of. He replaced his missing hand with a long knife buckled to his arm with leather straps. It's like pretty metal. In our number 8 spot today, we have the Tomb of Thomas. A few years ago, archaeologists were searching in the tomb of Thomas, who is a high-ranking Egyptian official. Within the tomb, they found jars that contained something they weren't exactly sure of. Well, further research was able to date this substance back 3,200 years ago, and guess what it was? Cheese. Dr. Enrico Greco from the University of Catania, who worked with colleagues from the Cairo University in Egypt to determine what this substance was, said, quote, "The material analyzed is probably the most ancient archaeological solid residue of cheese ever found to date. We know it was made mostly from sheep's and goat's milk, but for me it's really hard to imagine a specific flavor." While this is a super cool discovery and one that gives us incredible insight into those times thousands of years ago, imagine finding a 1,000-year-old cheese. That sounds absolutely disgusting. Honestly, I'm so grateful for the scientists who put up with things like that so we can have answers to these sorts of things. In our number 7 spot today, we have cats. In 2018, archaeologists were excavating a 4,500-year-old tomb that was found near Cairo, and if you're a cat person, this one might be one for you to skip over. Inside of this tomb, not only did researchers find 100 gilded wooden cats along with a bronze statue of Bastet, the goddess of cats, but they made the startling discovery of dozens of mummified cats. It is known in ancient Egyptian culture that cats were highly regarded and admired by humans. They weren't necessarily worshipped or anything like that, but they did see them as divine. The tomb these cats were found in has been dated back to the 5th dynasty of the Old Kingdom. While the looks of the cats is an absolutely horrifying one, not only was this find incredibly interesting, but it also showed that the mummification process is highly effective. In our number 6 spot today we have scratch marks. When archaeologists opened a tomb they had located that dated all the way back to the Qing dynasty, they certainly did not expect to find what was inside. They weren't shocked to find the remains of a person, but what was shocking was the state she was in. Her skin had turned black like charcoal and she had a terrifying expression on her face with her mouth wide open like she had been screaming. To make matters even worse, apparently there were scratch marks that she had left on the inside. Further research showed that it is believed that this woman suffered from a difficult birth and during labor she fainted. Since childbirth used to be a way more dangerous activity, it is thought that her family believed she had passed away and then they buried her, and of course you know the rest. What a horrifying story for everyone involved. In our number 5 spot today we have the silver Sumerian harp. The silver Sumerian harp was found in a very large royal tomb of ancient Sumeria. You might be sitting there thinking, a harp isn't exactly terrifying, and I agree. This harp certainly was not a terrifying find, but the scene it was found amongst absolutely was. The tomb contained not only the harp, but the musician who was playing it, along with an entire group of musicians, servants, and several soldiers, all who were sealed in this tomb while they were performing their duties. Many of them were dressed in what was considered formal attire and were wearing gorgeous jewelry. The area where all of these people were found is referred to as the death pit because of the large number of bodies found within it. Music was an incredibly important part of life, celebratory and ritual occasions in ancient Mesopotamia. In our number 4 spot today we have the Tomb of Sunken Skulls. In 2009, archaeologists were excavating the bottom of a prehistoric dry lake bed in Sweden when they began to find the foundations of some sort of a stone structure. Yeah, we're talking about a tomb found at the bottom of a lake. Further research began to unearth the usual things like animal bones, stone tools, and that sort of thing, but they also uncovered skulls belonging to 10 people that are believed to have lived 8,000 years ago. They found another 11th skull buried deep within the mud, and when they uncovered it, they found that fragments of another one of the skulls had been deliberately lodged inside of this 11th skull. Almost all of the skulls were jawless and were mounted on stakes. There are a few theories as to why the skulls were here, and some people believe that this site may have been used for secondary burials, but others believe that this tomb belonged to enemies that were killed in combat. Either way, researchers were rightfully shocked when they unearthed this tomb. In our number 3 spot today we have biscuit beetles. Okay, I know this one won't be horrifying to everyone, but as you guys know, I really hate bugs a lot, so this one seems like my worst nightmare. As it turns out, mummies aren't the only things that tombs can preserve. Unfortunately, some little beetles from 3,000 years ago managed to find themselves preserved inside of a loaf of funerary bread that was found inside of a tomb inside the necropolis of ancient Thebes. Food would often be left inside of ancient Egyptian tombs because they were symbolic offerings intended to feed the deceased in the afterlife. Well, the deceased apparently weren't the only ones chowing down because a bunch of biscuit beetles were found inside the bread. I just can't imagine being stoked to find a mummy and instead finding bugs. In our number 2 spot today we have the tomb of Hatshepsut. She was the 5th pharaoh of the 18th dynasty of Egypt, and she was the 2nd historically confirmed female pharaoh. She was an incredibly interesting person who we could really talk about all day, but we are here talking about tombs, so let's cut to when hers was found and unearthed. There were a few interesting things found within her tomb, but the real horrors came after when they began to examine her remains. They were actually able to find a cause of death for her and can actually attribute it to something she possessed. They found benzoprine carcinogenic skin lotion with the pharaoh, and it is believed that this gave her bone cancer. It is likely that she poisoned herself accidentally while she was just trying to soothe her skin. Being diagnosed with something like that with the help of modern medicine is already a horrible, painful, and scary thing. I couldn't even imagine having to go through it all those years ago without any kind of a treatment. In our number 1 spot spot today we have this ancient curse. To end off this list today we have a good old-fashioned curse that was unleashed from inside of a tomb. Okay, maybe that was a bit of an exaggeration, but there really was a curse found on the inside of this tomb. The tomb of Ankh-Mahor, who was a pharaoh's official who is thought to have lived around 4,000 years ago during Egypt's 6th dynasty, was an above-ground tomb that was shaped like a rectangular box. Inside of the tomb they found a curse inscribed that warned anyone who dared to disturb it. The curse, roughly translated, states that anything a trespasser, quote, might do against this, my tomb, the same shall be done to your property. It then goes on to warn the trespasser of his knowledge of spells and secret magic, and it threatens to fill impure intruders with the fear of seeing ghosts. These kind of curses have been found in other tombs, and while they certainly are nothing like the ones depicted in horror movies about mummies, it might still be a little unnerving to those unearthing this discovery.
Starting us off at number 10 is King Tut's tomb. I think it's pretty fair to say that King Tut's tomb is just about the most famous one on the planet these days. However, although it was discovered over a century ago, it wasn't until fairly recently that 2 secret rooms were found hidden inside the tomb. In August of 2015, a prominent English Egyptologist, Dr. Carl Nicholas Reeves, published a 50-page paper outlining the evidence of 2 hidden doorways inside of King Tut's tomb, and most interestingly, he theorized that the final resting place of world-famous Queen Nefertiti, whose tomb has yet to be found, might actually be intact behind the walls in Tut's tomb. Over the years there have been several scans of the walls to find out more. Some showed evidence of a corridor or void on the other side, while some did not. But honestly, considering the alleged curse entangled with unearthing King Tut's tomb, which was out in the open for all to see, I can only imagine what hell could be unleashed if we mess around with whatever is in that secret room. Coming in at number 9, Brompton Cemetery. There are a few things it seems pretty safe to want to avoid, and mysteriously sealed mausoleums housing the dead seem pretty high up on that list for me, but apparently not for all. Located in West London in the Brompton Cemetery lies a tomb that some believe to be a fully functioning time machine. Yes, you heard that right. Inside the tomb lies a woman by the name of Hannah Courtoy, who had inherited quite a fortune. She was supposedly a friend of Joseph Bonamy and Samuel Warner, the men who built the tomb, and as the story goes, the 2 men convinced her to finance the secret project with the promise of laying her down to rest inside once it was finished. Strangely, Warner died shortly after construction finished, and some think he died after discovering something horrid inside the tomb, while others speculate Bonamy killed him for revealing the secrets of the time machine itself. It is thought that it is Hannah's burial that is some kind of TARDIS capable of whisking one back to ancient Egypt or even turning back the clock and providing youth to those who find it. All that is needed is the large bronze key, but as luck would have it, it has been missing since its creation 150 years ago. Coming in at number 8, Machu Picchu. High in the Andes Mountains lies Machu Picchu, an ancient citadel and the most visited tourist location in Peru. However, it seems there may be more than meets the eye after a recent bone-chilling discovery. Through the power of electromagnetic equipment, a strange chamber appears to have been concealed behind the walls of the popular attraction. However, despite many appeals, the Peruvian government refuses to allow the door to be opened, which begs the question, do they know something we don't? It is still considered to be unexplored, as no one has been able to physically get on the other side of that door to check it out, not to mention that those who trespass risk getting a huge fine. I don't know about you, but it definitely feels like they're hiding something from us, but I guess the bigger question is, do we really want to know what? Coming in at number 7, priest holes. So, full disclosure, I know this one isn't really what you would traditionally call a tomb, but I think you'll see why I'm including it on today's list in just a moment here. So way back during the reign of Queen Elizabeth I, which spanned from the mid-16th century until the early 17th century, it was
not a good time to be a Catholic. In fact, you may or may not recall from high school history class that it was during this time that it was considered a treasonable offense to be Catholic, and practicing Catholic rites was punishable by life in prison or even death. So what this meant was that Catholics were forced to practice in secret. Brave Catholic priests would roam the country performing secret ceremonies in the homes of believers of the religion. However, the Queen was well aware of the rebellion happening under her nose, so she would order her men to roam around the country in order to catch priests in the act. Now, this is where the priest holes come in. Priest holes were tiny, cleverly concealed spaces designed to hide a priest during one of these ordered raids. Because remember, if he was found, he, along with any of the practicing members in the household, would likely die. However, these raids could last for days, even weeks, and so some priests actually died of starvation or suffocation waiting out the search in their cramped quarters. Today, the secret chambers remain scattered across the Tudor houses of England, and those that have been inside say they feel this eerie presence of priests who lost their life hiding from execution. Coming in at number 6, an upright tomb. During the Mayan Empire, one of the most important cities in Central America was Copan. Now, Copan existed as a hub of trade and politics from the 5th century to the 9th, and as important as the city was, for many years we knew virtually nothing about it. But all that changed in 2005 with the discovery of this tomb, which so happens to contain the remains of an elite member of Mayan society. Now, what's strange and a little eerie about this tomb, as opposed to any other one containing an ancient mummified emperor, is that the man inside, who is estimated to have died around 650 AD, was propped upright, sitting in a chair with his legs crossed, which was not typical practice. On top of that, the tomb appeared to have almost been hidden away inside a temple. Could there have been a specific reason? I mean, what do you think? Was this one we should have just left alone? Coming in at number 5, an unsuspecting tomb. Typically, when we imagine ancient tombs, the ones that come to mind are the elaborate mausoleums of kings, queens, or warriors. But of course, they are not the only ones out there. In 2021, the partially mummified remains of Marcus Venerius Secundio were found in a tomb in the ancient Roman city of Pompeii and have been described as the best preserved human remains ever discovered in the city. Now, what's wild about this is the story behind how this man came to earn a tomb. You see, Marcus was a slave and the custodian of ancient Pompeii's Temple of Venus. However, he was freed from slavery and decided to join the ranks of the Augustales, who were a college of priests in charge of a form of emperor worship. Plus, according to an inscription on the tomb, it seems Marcus helped organize performances in Greek during his time alive. However, even with the wonderful and heartwarming story, it's still strange because it was apparently more typical to cremate bodies during the Roman times than to mummify them. So why was it decided Marcus would be mummified and hidden inside the temple? We may never know. Coming in at number 4, a horror bunker. So this one doesn't really qualify as ancient, I'll give you that, but it is definitely still one of the creepiest ones on this list. Recently, about a month ago, archaeologists stumbled across a horrifying underground bunker close to Anda City in northeastern China that would have been a part of Imperial Japan's infamous Unit 731. Now, Unit 731, for those that are not familiar, was an incredibly cruel biowarfare and human experimentation site during the 1940s that carried out experiments on thousands of prisoners of war, eventually killing an estimated 12,000 of them. Atrocities like amputating victims' limbs without anesthesia, putting them in pressure chambers until their eyes popped out, and injecting them with deadly diseases are only some of the evil committed in the wartime unit. And shockingly, this bunker that was found is thought to have been the largest testing site for that unit, meaning that thousands of men and women were held captive in this secret chamber where most would have also died. So again, would we call it an ancient tomb? I mean, no, probably not, but I think we can all agree it's a seriously eerie find. Coming in at number 3, the mausoleum of Qin Shi Huang. Buried deep in the Shanxi province lies the tomb of China's first emperor, Qin Shi Huang. And as far as famous tombs go, this one is a about as high up there as you can get. For a little backstory, while he reigned, Qin Shi Huang wanted to make sure his tomb was a worthy approximation of his own legacy. So he enlisted thousands of laborers who worked tirelessly for decades to create a tomb worthy of being an emperor. Allegedly, 700,000 laborers worked on the tomb, and it still took nearly 40 years to build. Now, fast forward several thousand years, and what do we find inside? Well, about 7,000 terracotta soldiers, complete with horses, chariots, officers, infantry, and a court. But even more out of this world are the rivers of pure mercury that historians have reason to believe line the inside of the tomb. According to ancient writings, the tomb also contains an entire underground kingdom protected by ancient ballistas and mechanisms that will fire arrows at any potential grave robbers. However, unless that someone is able to get past the underground Mercury River without dying, we might never know for sure. Coming in at number 2, the secret tomb of Genghis Khan. Despite the fact that we all know the notorious 12th century ruler of the ancient Mongol Empire, there is not a soul alive that can tell you for certain just where exactly he was buried. In fact, it has been the subject of many debates over the years. Legend has it that Genghis Khan is entombed in a spot so secretive that anyone who even came near his funeral procession was killed. To make sure it remained a secret, even the 800 horsemen who trampled his gravesite to keep its location secret were executed, along with the 1,000 laborers who escorted his body and dug his final resting place. Just imagine having such loyal followers that you could actually assure this plan would be followed through with without being able to oversee it. Now, to make up for this, a mausoleum has been created to honor him, but it only contains a few personal effects, not his actual remains. His actual resting place might just be the longest kept secret ever. And last up in our number 1 spot, the Paris catacombs. It may not be the first thing that comes to mind when you think of an ancient tomb, but it is where millions have been laid to rest. And if there's one thing that it has in spades, it is secret little nooks and crannies at every turn. It all started in 18th century Paris when cemeteries were in a near hopeless state. You could barely walk through town without smelling the rotting dead bodies, and they were quickly running out of places to put them all. But when King Louis XVI came into power, he enlisted his architect to build a system of underground catacombs to transfer all the bodies to. It allegedly took 12 years to transfer all of the bodies, which is no surprise considering the remains of more than 6 million people can be found there. And as you probably guessed, it's wicked haunted. And although many have dared to visit these winding maze tunnels, that doesn't mean it comes without risk. Visitors say they've seen strange orbs of light, taunting voices, and indescribable shadows lurking in the tunnel, while others say they've literally seen ghosts. But the biggest reason to fear the tunnels is because many that enter never return. Several reports of disappearances have happened through the years, and while some have been found, many have remained lost forever.
Starting us off at number 10 is the Padmanabhaswamy Temple. Good luck spelling that if you ever get it at a spelling bee, I hope you don't. But anyway, this temple is located in Kerala, India, and is one of 108 other temples that are devoted to the worship of Vishnu. The temple is under the care of the Travancore royal family, but in 2011 a man filed a case saying they mismanaged the assets of the temple. So the Supreme Court sent 7 people to explore it and document its belongings, but it turned into a lot more than that. They found 6 massive secret vaults or chambers with doors made of iron and no visible hatch or opening. The chambers were named Chamber A to F, and they've been able to open Chamber C to F many times. Chamber A took some time, but they did get open as well, but Chamber B has stumped everyone. No one has any idea what the chamber contains, but people believe it's holy in nature. But here's the thing, the temple has 3 doors. The first has metal grills on it, but they managed to open that one. Behind that door was another wooden door which they also managed to open. However, the last door, made of iron, had no ways of unlocking it whatsoever. Locals think if any human attempt with technology is made to try and open the door against its will, it'll unleash calamity into the city. There are even legends about the initial exploration committee where one member tried to open the door but fell ill, whilst another one lost his mum while trying to open it as well. Either way, can't we just leave something untouched? Maybe we don't need to know what's behind the last door. Chamber B can just forever just be secret chamber B. Coming in at number 9 is the Kingdom of Lyonesse. Now legend has it Lyonesse, which was located in the British Isles of Scilly, one day became fully engulfed by the ocean. In that one day, it wasn't an overtime erosion ting, it was all in one day. People even believe that the 140 islands in its place now are just hilltops of the Lost Kingdom. Lyonesse was most famous for being part of Arthurian legend as the home of Tristan the resident hero. The one-day drowning was even said to have occurred during the 6th century, which was the time of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. So I mean, it is backed up historically and sort of geologically by the islands as well, loosely, very loosely. However, it's said that on that fated day, the rich of the kingdom put all their valuable belongings in tombs, hoping the tombs would float or at least survive the drowning as well as, themselves. That way they wouldn't be left with nothing when their home was fully submerged. The people didn't survive and the small tombs were also scattered everywhere. None have been found yet, but I think that's fine. The number of lost people attached to each of those tombs almost gives them all really bad karma or luck. Even if someone did find it, spending a dead man's treasure can just never go down well. Others went as far as to say they put their babies in the tombs as well, hoping they would float to the top and survive. So I mean, you could either find a chest with treasure or a skeleton baby. It's a 50-50. Of course, the existence of Lyonesse has never been confirmed, so it's hard to back up with evidence, but I believe it. At number 8 we have the Great Aztecs. The Great Temple of Tenochtitlan was dedicated to the Aztec god of war and the Aztec god of rain and agriculture. The temple was built sometime after 1325, but it was rebuilt 6 times. The reconstruction model they made of what it looked like back in the day is absolutely stunning, but now there are just ruins left. I hate when that happens, and it happens quite a bit. Items that have been excavated can already be seen at museums, but in 2015 another big discovery was made. Archaeologists found a tunnel passage underneath the temple that led to 2 sealed chambers, and they believe inside are the remains of some of the earliest Aztec leaders or gods. They always thought the Aztecs cremated their leaders since they spent decades excavating and found nothing, until now. So either these chambers are historical gold, or they could be the resting place of Aztec gods who may then wreak havoc on us for disturbing their slumber. Whichever one you want to believe. Filling our number 7 slot is El Dorado, and I'm sure we've all heard of the legend of the golden city of El Dorado. Gaining a lot of attention in the 16th century, explorers and treasure hunters have been looking for El Dorado for as long as they knew it was a thing. I feel like I've been hearing about it since I was born. But El Dorado was actually the name of a mythical tribal chief of the Muisca native people in Colombia. They say he covered himself in gold dust and submerged himself in a lake. Since then, the legend has gone from being about him to being about a city of gold, then a kingdom of gold, and then an empire of gold. Despite centuries of searching, no one has been able to find El Dorado. I mean, a whole kingdom of gold? Of course they weren't going to make that easy to find. Many speculate El Dorado, the chief, wasn't that mythical at all. They believe his tomb is the key to El Dorado. People have spent so long searching for the kingdom itself, they forgot where it all began. The man himself. A lot of conspiracy theorists believe if El Dorado's tomb is found and opened, the kingdom will follow suit. But opening his tomb could also be like opening Pandora's box and lead to complete destruction. It just can't be as easy as simply finding and opening a tomb and becoming unimaginably rich, can it? If it can, that's a one-way ticket to Colombia for me. Now at number 6 is the Royal Cemetery. The cemetery in question is located outside Nanchang City, China, and it's 2,000 years old and it's bloody massive. It takes up 40,000 square meters and has 8 tombs as well as a chariot burial area with walls 900 meters long. But it also has a locked tomb in the main mausoleum that grabbed everybody's attention. Archaeologists hope that it'll help identify whose burial site it is, and at this point their only guess is that it was Liu He, who was the most influential ruler during the Western Han Dynasty. The era itself is a bit blurry, but the loose story is that Liu assumed the throne, was then ousted, then he returned, and then he was forced out again. Major drama. The team found hundreds of terracotta figures, 10 tons of bronze coins, more than 10,000 things made of either gold, bamboo, jade or iron, and they even found a road network and a drainage system. It sounds like these people were building a mini city, not just a burial site, which, you know what, do you. Either way, from the amount of valuables they already found there, is there really a need to open the locked tomb? If the guy went to this much effort to make his deathbed like this, I think we should just let him lie in it. Just let him be. Why must we ruin things? We don't need to. Coming in at number 5 is the lost city of Kalahari. So back in 1885, Canadian entertainer the Great Farini was one of the first to explore the unexplored Kalahari Desert in southern Africa. When he came back, he had photos with him which depicted ruins that were the remains of a lost civilization, or so he thought. He saw a broken line of stone that looked like it could have been a wall at some point, and he followed the remains and found heaps of flat stones that clearly had cement in between them. That's evidence of a city if I ever knew that. That was sarcasm, by the way. After that, many have tried to find the lost city. Even Elon Musk's grandparents tried to find the city 12 times. In 2016, aerial scans confirmed the man-made ruins the Great Farini had described, so whatever it was real. But extreme conspiracy theorists believe all the flat half-buried stones are the top part of a gigantic tomb belonging to one of the great leaders of one of the tribes living in the lost city. The theorists believe the leader and his tribe ensured his tomb would never be opened by performing rituals for it and on it, and if for any unfortunate reason someone does try and open it, well, I'll let your imagination wander. At number 4 is the intact tomb, which is very rare considering most of these tombs are thousands and thousands of years old, so finding one intact is a dream if anything. And with Egyptian tombs it's even harder. Even King Tutankhamun's tomb has been spoiled. But anyway, in 2018, Egyptian archaeologists found a 4,400-year-old tomb of a high priest called Watia. Hopefully I pronounced that right, didn't think I did, who lived during the 5th dynasty. Within the tomb there are 5 shaft tombs and 2 false doors. One of the shafts had been opened and unsealed, but the other 4 have stayed sealed. The 5th dynasty was the era in which the oldest copies of pyramid texts were carved into the pyramids. The tomb is around 10 meters long and is carved out of rock, which doing with hand tools is bloody hard. I've never done it, but it sounds bloody hard. The paintings and artwork they found are all really good quality despite having some water and time damage. However, they refused to open the other tombs for an undisclosed reason, so perhaps that's all we need to know. Filling our number 3 slot is Joseph Bonamy. Joseph was an English sculptor, artist, but more importantly Egyptologist. He went on the Hay expedition where he sketched antiquities, and people speculated he had learned the secret to time travel on his time there. But what stands out about Joseph was his mysterious connection with socialite Hannah Courtois, who may have funded his expeditions. Hannah inherited a fortune, and when she died, her mausoleum was this massive Egyptian-style crypt that Joseph had previously designed for her before he died. For 1854, it was distinct. Ironically enough, Joseph is buried nearby, and it's said that before he died, he passed all his knowledge on to Hannah. Reuters were actually the ones who published a report about this in 1998, claiming her mausoleum contains a working time machine. A key for the tomb has been missing for quite some time, which just adds more fuel to the fire. If it is a time machine, I would like to travel in time to ask Joseph what is actually happening. Now at number 2 is the lost city of Zed. Has anyone seen the movie of this? Because I have, and I loved it, but then it ended so abruptly and I was like, oh my god, is that the end? Are you kidding? That can't be it. I just wasn't emotionally ready. But anyway, I'm blabbing on. British surveyor Colonel Percy Harrison Fawcett believed this indigenous city existed in the jungle of Mato Grosso, Brazil, and he decided to call it the Lost City of Zed. He based his belief on his own exploration of the Amazon River as well as histories of South America that he had read. He never did find the lost city in the end, and him and his son actually died trying. Many people believe that the indigenous people living in that area know exactly where the city is and how to get to it, but they've made it their life mission to stop outsiders from getting in or finding the entrance. Many believe they're guarding one of their ancestors' tombs, which lies inside of the lost city. Others, on the other hand, believe it may even be Colonel Percy's tomb. Either way, if that many people are trying to stop you from finding something, odds are there's a good reason for it. And finally, at number 1 is Atlantis. Not the luxury hotel resort and water park, the underwater lost city. Plato first mentioned Atlantis in 360 BC, and it was meant to be an insanely powerful kingdom with technology more advanced than ours and an unmatchable navy. Fast forward around 9600 BC, a terrible disaster hits and the island sank into the sea, never to be seen again. Many teams have tried to find Atlantis over the years, notably a man called Simcha Jacobovici, hopefully I said that right, who dove into the Mariana Trench. And all he found was 6 Bronze Age stone anchors near Spain, which seemed to have come from a civilization existing 4,000 years ago, which is still way off when Atlantis existed. But many people believe because their technology was so advanced, they found a way to disappear to us but still exist by themselves. Perhaps they cracked the code to living completely underwater as humans, and that's what they've been doing since 9600 BC, who knows? Plato never clarified how advanced actually was. Many people believe an underwater tomb belonging to one of Atlantis' early leaders is the entrance to the hidden kingdom. But do we really want to find it? What if they advanced even more being hidden away all this time? What if they've developed weaponry to face anyone who accidentally finds this tomb and exposes them? What if they're strong enough to take us down? I don't have any more what ifs. Should we really be seeking our demise? I think not. And I think you should agree with me. Thank you.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have fire mummies. This discovery isn't necessarily one that came from a tomb, but it is from an ancient burial site, and it's unlike anything I've ever seen before. This is something that was discovered when loggers ended up stumbling upon the Kabayan burial caves and found a bunch of tiny nut-like coffins. This led people to wonder how the ancient culture of the Ibaloi, the ones who created these burial caves, managed to fit the deceased inside of these small coffins, and the answer is unbelievably fascinating. When a member of the tribe was close to death, they were forced to gulp down a bunch of salt water, which essentially would begin the curing process from the inside out. Once they died, they would be rubbed down with herbs and then literally slow roasted over a period of weeks or months, and it is said to help speed up the process, members of the tribe would blow tobacco smoke inside of the body. In the end, this would create a compact and well-preserved corpse that could be placed into these tiny coffins. The method actually worked so well that you can still see their intricate tattoos to this day. In our number 9 spot today, we have the unmarked sarcophagus. When archaeologists in Egypt found a mysteriously large black granite sarcophagus that was unmarked, they knew they were going to find something unexpected inside, but it truly was worse than anyone could have imagined. When opened, this sarcophagus was found to contain 3 skeletons, but unfortunately and disgustingly, according to officials, sewage had leaked into the coffin from a nearby road, which left these skeletons resting in that awful mess. Not only do I feel bad for the people who made this discovery, because truly how awful would that be, but I feel terrible for the people these skeletons belong to. Honestly, sometimes I feel like we should leave things and the dead alone, but in times like this, I'm glad these people were found. Further analysis revealed that those buried inside of the coffin included a young woman and 2 young men, all of which appear to have been placed on top of each other in different burials. One of the skeletons had clearly been on the receiving end of a medical treatment called trepanation, or making holes in the skull. In our number 8 spot today, we have the Lothagam North Pillar site. One of the most incredible archaeological finds in Kenya led to a, well, it wasn't exactly a horrifying discovery, but it certainly was unexpected. Around 5,000 years ago, a tribe of herders paused by a lake in what is now Kenya in order to bury their dead. This ended up turning into one of the most massive and monumental construction projects Africa has ever seen, which is no easy feat. For 450 years, they dug into the bedrock, piled up slabs of sandstone, and buried their dead for generations with ritual ceremonies, and this led to what researchers now consider the earliest and largest monumental cemetery in Eastern Africa. Here's the one kind of unexpected thing that they found here at this site though. Along with the bodies of those who had passed, researchers also found 405 gerbil teeth at this site. As it turns out, there's a perfectly reasonable explanation for this, and it's because they were used to make a headpiece for just one of those who had passed away. This site might not be as large and tall as some of the other monuments like the pyramids of Giza, but what makes them most remarkable is that this site was made by the people for the people. Not for emperors or kings and queens, it was for tribe members of every age and gender, all buried alongside each other. In our number 7 spot today, we have the ancient virus. With modern science comes ancient discoveries. Using advanced DNA sequencing on a 16th century mummy, a team of scientists revealed the complex and evolutionary history of hepatitis B, or the HBV virus. The genomic data was extracted from a 450-year-old mummy, and it is the oldest evidence we have of the virus, which suggests that humans have lived with and evolved alongside HPV for centuries. While it's terrible to think of people suffering from an infection, especially one that thanks to modern medicine we have a vaccine for, this discovery gives immeasurable insight into the virus itself, and this can be used to help scientists understand it better. While I mentioned that there is a vaccine, this is something that is still highly deadly in our world for people who don't have access to it. The more we can learn about it, the better understanding we can have, which will hopefully in turn save people's lives. In our number 6 spot today we have the Netherlands catacombs. Earlier this year, while work was being done on a church in Delft, which is in the Netherlands, in order to extend the royal burial chamber that exists within the catacombs, there were about 200 skeletons that were suddenly uncovered. After months of digging, archaeologists reached a depth of 1.5 meters and they had found 150 people in proper graves, with 4 to 5 people found buried together in various charnel repositories. The discovery came shortly after there were bones from medieval times found on the square which the church stands, and it is said that researchers were finding a large difference between the two sets of remains. The square is said to have been a burying ground for the poor, while the church was left for the rich, which is where the main difference stems from, as people in the court are usually younger and in notably worse condition. Research is now being done to identify who these people may have been on both accounts. There's something really eerie about finding 200 skeletons located in the catacombs beneath a church. Okay, it's not a little eerie, it's a lot eerie. In our number 5 spot today we have ancient tomb art. This tomb comes to us from a long time ago and it was located in the Shamir Heights in northern Israel. This tomb is large and it's made up of 400 tons of boulders and it stretches 65 feet wide. This chamber is said to date back 4,000 years, which is a shocking discovery because that means that humans may have been a part of an organized society in this area all those years ago. There are many paintings that have been found inside of this tomb, which made this the first time art had been documented inside one of these chambers in the Middle East, which is incredible. We just haven't exactly been able to figure out what they depict yet. Inside of the chamber there were the remains of 3 people. One of the most fascinating parts of this discovery is that there are these lines carved into the ceiling that are all connected to one arc, but we just don't know what it means. In our number 4 spot today we have the Inca mummies. In 1976, researchers found 2 mummies at a burial site in northern Chile. These 2 corpses belonged to 2 young women who were the victims of human ritual sacrifice. It is likely that the sacrifice they were a part of was one that was carried out by the Inca to commemorate either historical or political events or as a response to natural disaster. The mummies were found wearing silver ornaments and they were surrounded by ceramic vessels and they were wearing red robes. The red in the Inca clothing was often created using hematite or other iron oxides, but upon further inspection of these mummies, it was revealed that their red clothing held something much more dangerous. The dye used for their clothing contained cinnabar, which is a mineral rich in mercury. This was often used in the ancient world as a pigment for makeup, clothing, and painting, but handling it leads to mercury poisoning. What is strange is that researchers believe that the toxicity of cinnabar was known in ancient Peru, so we aren't exactly sure why they used it in the first place, but it's thought it might have been used as protection against grave robbers. In our number 2 spot today we have the Phaleron Delta Necropolis. In 2016, during the construction of a new library and opera house in Athens, crews accidentally stumbled upon this necropolis, which is a cemetery that is the final resting place of more than 1,500 citizens from ancient Greece, and while this most definitely is an eerie discovery and a reminder of our own mortality, the horrifying discovery came when they found a smaller chamber within this one, and inside there were more than 80 skeletons that all had their hands shackled above their heads. How's that for a horrifying discovery? Each of these skeletons belonged to people who died young and healthy, and while the exact cause of death is yet to be determined, all signs are pointing to some kind of mass execution. Right now, the best theory as to who these people may have been is that they may be some of the people who were part of a coup in 632 BC that was led by Cylon against Athens. It's just strange that even after these people passed, they didn't unshackle them, but that just might be a mystery destined to stay a secret. In our number 1 spot today we have the Ancient Mystery. Okay, this is one of the coolest things I've ever heard and it has me rethinking my career. Maybe I do want to be an archaeologist after all. Basically, researchers have found a 1,300-year-old Chinese mystery, and where did they find it? In a tomb raider's shaft. This feels like a Hollywood blockbuster and somehow it's just real ancient life. While excavating a tomb in China, the team discovered the skeleton of a young man who was riddled with wounds, giving clues as to how he died. The man is estimated to have been about 25 years old, and it is thought that he was harmed and then thrown into the Tomb Raider shaft while he was still alive, which is absolutely gruesome. It is believed that this crime took place between 640 and 680 AD. It appears as though he wasn't a thief because the shaft had begun to be refilled with soil by the time of his death, so we really aren't sure why this young man met this cruel fate. As a true crime enthusiast, this is absolutely fascinating, and I really wish we could find some answers to bring this guy's story full circle, but sometimes these things just stay a secret.
Starting us off at number 10 is King Tutankhamun Part 1. Now back in the day, and this was done a lot in ancient Egypt, people would place curses on tombs as a safety measure. This was done because if any of the possessions inside a tomb were disturbed, then the person buried or wrapped up inside wouldn't have had a peaceful afterlife. But that fact clearly didn't stop many Egyptologists, including the Earl of Carnarvon, George Herbert, who funded the group dig in the Valley of the Kings where King Tutankhamun's tomb was found. George and his daughter traveled to Egypt where they were going to be present when the tomb was officially opened by the Department of Antiquities. However, the father-daughter duo, along with an assistant, went into the tomb multiple times, which was just unauthorized. They even made a breach in the corner of the tomb's doorway and looked inside, and this was the first time modern people had stepped foot in the tomb. Journalists reported that the words "death shall come on swift wings to him who disturbs the peace of the king" were inscribed near the door. A few months later, the Earl died from an infected mosquito bite. I don't want to say it's karma, but it was karma. Now I know that could be completely unlinked, but a similar lesion was found on the pharaoh's cheek during an autopsy, which is just sus as hell. And to top it all off, all the lights in the Earl's house just blacked out the moment he died with zero explanation whatsoever. So it's safe to say death really did come on swift wings, didn't it? But At number 8 we have The Unknown Tomb. Back in 1699, Louis Pénicher wrote a book called The Treatise on Embalming, and in the book he told the story of a very precarious Polish man. The man had bought 2 tombs with mummies inside them from Alexandria, hoping to study them for medicinal purposes. Okay, first off, I didn't even know you could just buy mummies and tombs just like that, like surely that isn't legal. Either way, as he was sailing back home with the mummies in tow, he started being haunted by 2 ghosts that magically just appeared on the boat, and of course he knew the ghosts had to be the mummies. He started seeing visions of 2 figures come at him and was losing his grip on reality. The weather at sea was starting to get a lot worse as well, and so freaking out he threw the mummies overboard and peace was very quickly restored. Filling our number 7 slot is Seth I. Now back in 1833, German archaeologist Carl Richard Lepsius went to various lectures on the decipherment of the Egyptian language and then travelled to Egypt. There he undertook a dig in the Valley of the Kings and found a complete undiscovered tomb, which was rare since most of them had been found by then. The tomb belonged to Seth I, and Carl took a full-on entire pillar from the tomb back to Berlin with him. As soon as he got back though, he became sick almost immediately and was rushed to the hospital where he found out the right side of his body was fully paralyzed. If that wasn't bad enough, he was diagnosed with cancer not long after, and it's believed that the paralysis came to be because of him stealing the pillar from the tomb. Now I love how people think they can just take whatever the hell they want from these tombs and nothing is gonna happen to them. Like, it doesn't work like that, buddy. Something will happen to you. You take a pillar, you get paralyzed. It's a dog-eat-dog world, people. Savage. Savagery. Snakery. Just push it all away. Now at number 6 is the annual occurrence. Renowned Egyptologist Zahi Hawass was doing some excavation at the Kom Abu Billo site, which is the location of various tombs. He was transporting some artifacts from these tombs to a different location, and that was the day things changed for him forever. On that same day as he was transporting the items, his aunt died. Then a year later on the same day, his uncle died. The following year on the same day again, his cousin died. So there had now been 3 deaths 3 years in a row on the same frickin' day. Coincidence? Most definitely not. Newspapers around Egypt pointed to the curse of the pharaohs for being behind the deaths, whereas Hawass himself said the truth is that there is no curse of the pharaohs. Ooh, unpopular opinion maybe perhaps. Speculation. Coming in at number 5 is the curious case of George. So Egyptology professor George Reisner was quite a big name back in the 1930s and 40s because he discovered the tomb of Khufu's mother back in the day and basically made media history when he delivered a worldwide broadcast from inside the king's chamber. That's a flex if I ever saw one. Like, I thought I flexed, that is a flex. Either way, by the spring of 1942, Reisner was working inside the pyramid when he suddenly collapsed. Now the thing about George was that he was almost entirely blind, yet he was extremely vocal and articulate and hadn't mentioned anything about feeling sick that day. His team had to drag his body out of the pyramid paralyzed, and he died very shortly after. No one knows why or how he died, how he became paralyzed, but by now I think it's safe to say the curse of the pharaohs got him. Got him. Got him. At number 4 is the Tomb Raider, and no, I'm not talking about Lara Croft, although I really wish I was. So back in 2004, a German man was visiting the Valley of the Kings in Egypt and stole a relic from King Tutankhamun's tomb. I mean, international law would call it stealing. He, on the other hand, called it a souvenir, so I mean, that's none of my business. Stealing. Either way, when he got back to Germany, the man came down with a horrible fever and fatigue despite being 100% healthy days prior. The fever turned into paralysis and soon death. The man's stepson was convinced that the relic his dad had stolen was cursed and returned it to Egypt's Supreme Council for Antiquities, hoping that that would allow his dad's soul to rest in peace. I mean, honestly, if you're disrespectful enough to steal an artifact from a grave, then does your soul really deserve to rest in peace? Didn't think so. Next. Filling our number 3 slot is Casimir IV Jagiellon, and I know there are many pronunciations of his name, the Lithuanian version, the Polish version, like there's many, so don't come for me, honestly. Now Casimir had a bunch of royal titles, but the main ones were the Grand Duke of Lithuania and the King of Poland, both of which he upheld from the 1440s till his death. He died in 1492 at the age of 64, and his remains were put inside a tomb and sealed inside the chapel of the Wawel Castle. Fast forward nearly 500 years later, a team of 12 archaeologists ventured to Poland to open his tomb, and when they did, they found his rotten corpse in there, which sounds pretty anticlimactic, like what else were they expecting to find there? Either way, days after they opened it, 4 of the 12 archaeologists died, and 2 years later only 2 people from the team were still alive. One of the survivors was a microbiologist who found fungi in the royal insignia taken from the tomb, and this fungi specifically produces aflatoxins that are fatal if they touch your skin or if you breathe them in. So it wasn't the tomb's curse specifically that killed all these people, but I mean it was the curse of the fungi, and arguably that is more scary, you guys. Now at number 2 is the curse of Tamerlane. Now Timur or Tamerlane was a Turco-Mongol Persianate conqueror and the founder of the Timurid Empire, which is basically modern day Iran. Big dude with big energy, honestly, gotta give it to him. Either way, back in June of 1941, a group of Soviet anthropologists went to his burial tomb in Uzbekistan hoping to exhume his body. When they finally got there and opened the doors, they found a chilling message inscribed on his tomb. When I rise from the dead, the world shall tremble. And it also said, whomsoever opens my tomb shall unleash an invader more terrible than I. And boy, oh boy, was he not wrong. 3 days after his tomb was opened, Hitler invaded the Soviet Union, and so the whole invader more terrible than I was most definitely true. But then get this, after hearing about the situation, Stalin ordered the body to be reburied, and then days after that, Soviet forces won against German forces when they liberated Stalingrad. So I feel like Tamerlane's curse was very much alive when all this was going on. Russia and Germany were like, no, you bury him, no, you bring him back out, no, you bury him, no, you bring him back out. This guy's body was what decided the fate of World War II, I just wanted to let you know. It wasn't Hitler, it wasn't the Axis Allies powers, it was none of that. And finally, at number 1 is the god of death. Ominous, I know. So back in 1971, which is like semi-recent considering the other dates on this list, a group of men led by Egyptologist Walter Bryan Emery were doing a dig in Saqqara. The group came upon a hidden tomb in a deep hole, and inside it was the statue of Osiris, the god of death. The statue wasn't even that big, it was like less than 20 centimeters long max, and the worker quickly gave it to Emery, who took it to his dig house. He then went to take a shower, but a few minutes later his assistant heard some strange moaning noise coming from the house. He went in and knocked on the bathroom door but got no answer. Getting slightly worried now, he went inside to find Emery clutching the basin for dear life, unable to move with a horrid look of trauma on his face. His assistant had to physically grab him by the shoulders, drag him to the couch, and then call an ambulance. The diagnosis was pretty clear. Emery was completely paralyzed from the right side and became unable to speak, and sadly died the next day out of literally nowhere. His team and wife believe the tomb was cursed, whereas I believe if you're finding the god of death hidden somewhere deep down in the desert, you can't possibly be surprised that you yourself was met with death very quickly later. Just saying, it's logic. 1 + 1 = death. Osiris equals death. Hello.
Kicking off the list at number 10. EA6736. Ancient Egyptians worshipped lots of animals. At one point or another, you've heard about how cats were highly respected back then, but they also worshipped other animals as well. It's not just cats, okay? So if you're sitting there looking at Mr. Freckles or whatever, don't give him too much praise, okay? There's other worshipped animals to talk about, like baboons. Believe it or not, baboons. They were pretty important pieces to this ancient puzzle. Egyptians had tattoos of baboons, but the most famous piece of history that we have preserved is in the collections of the British Museum in London. There's a mummy on display and it looks a little different than the rest. EA6736 was recovered from the Temple of Khans in Luxor, Egypt. This little man here dates back to the New Kingdom period, so anywhere around 1550 BC to 10 BC. So yeah, he's a little old. He looks great for his age though, I mean really. Baboons would appear all over art and religion in ancient Egypt. One of my favorite facts ever has to be that in ancient Egypt, pharaohs would train baboons to make arrests. Yeah, imagine stealing a pear for your family and then 4 baboons start chasing you, doing parkour, jumping over houses. It's crazy. Baboons are so smart, no wonder they worship them, honestly. Number 9, Ankhesenamun. This queen was ruling during the 18th dynasty of Egypt. The pharaoh Akhenaton, this was his daughter. She followed in her father's footsteps and was a great ruler, but she was also the wife and half-brother of one King Tut. Her and King Tut had the same father, but their mothers were different. After King Tut's death, however, it's believed this queen may have married the pharaoh shortly after. And perhaps she's buried near him currently in the Valley of the Monkeys. That's why we can't find her. Back in 2010, DNA testing was being done in tomb KB21, where 2 18th dynasty queens were recovered from that tomb in the Valley of the Kings, but not enough data was found from the mummies, but they do know the DNA is from the 18th dynasty royal bloodline, so we're getting closer. In another tomb though, KB63, numerous coffins were found. One had an imprint of a woman on it, along with jewelry, women's clothing, but the biggest clue really was pottery fragments. Of course. We've all played Assassin's Creed. The truth is in the scenery, my friends. The name Patan was on these pottery fragments, and the only person to ever use this name was the lost queen of Ankhesenamun. So we're getting close, but let's maybe, stop destroying other graves in the process. Let's try and find a nicer way to do it. Let's keep hers a secret maybe. Number 8, King Ramses VIII. Number 8, the 8th. You know what I'm doing. The last son of Ramses III, King Ramses VIII. He's the 7th pharaoh of the 20th dynasty. King Ramses VIII. Okay, history is confusing with these numbers sometimes, I tell ya. I had to proofread that sentence a few times when scripting this one up. This lost king had the throne for a very short amount of time, and historians are trying to understand why. He was the only pharaoh of the 20th dynasty whose tomb is still out there, somewhere in the Valley of the Kings, just waiting. The thing is, with his ruling being so short, the theory out there is that the tomb of KV19 that belonged to the son of Ramses IX, many believe this tomb was originally built for Ramses VIII, but once he became king, everybody was like, maybe not this guy, Yeah, you're not that guy, pal. Apparently you're not that guy. Apparently you weren't that guy. There is a confirmed tomb that was never used for Ramses VIII as well, tomb QV43 in the Valley of the Queens. Made for him, but never used. The poor souls who had to build these, my gosh. Number 7, Luxor tomb. We've been saying 2,500 years ago a lot, and don't get me wrong, that's an awful long time ago with all this ancient history. But in 2014, archaeologists discovered a 4,000-year-old tomb from the 11th dynasty. Yeah, it was tucked away in Luxor, Egypt all this time. Spanish archaeologists found a tomb belonging to a leader from the 11th dynasty. It's pretty obvious this was somebody from the royal family or somebody who was a high-ranking official, because at the time, Luxor was the capital city of ancient Egypt. Officials believe this tomb could have been used as a mass grave due to the, large amount of human remains found inside. That's a pretty jarring clue. It's important to note that this tomb had also been used during the 17th dynasty because tools and utensils from later on in that time were also found in this tomb. We're gonna find a spork in 5,000 years and be like, yes, ancient tools for Gogurt. Number 6, the animal tombs. This tomb was found, as you may have guessed, in the Valley of the Kings, like all the great ones here. But this one doesn't sound like the rest. For starters, it's a number rather than a name. What in the Elon Musk is happening here? Whose name was the number? What? Tomb KV50 and KV51 and this one as well all form a group referred to as the animal tombs. Underneath 6 feet of debris, the entrance to these tombs were found. So when we enter a tomb normally that's been untouched, ideally for thousands of years, we can find anything. In fact, whatever they do find, it's a win, I guess. It helps complete this age-long puzzle. So when officials opened KV52 and it was completely empty, that doesn't feel too nice. That's not very warming. It was empty except for 2 boxes, both black and undecorated. The larger of the 2 contained the remains of a monkey, and the smaller one was a chest and it had 4 compartments. Yeah, hauntingly bare compared to what else we have on this list coming up. Number 5. KV55. Okay, we covered KV50, 52, they're all one tomb, but they're not, they're separate tombs. What's going on here? This one was discovered right next to King Tut's tomb, and the reason we call this tomb by a number rather than a name is because, well, we don't know who it was made for, really. The classic, what happened, you know? Even the walls of the tomb inside, they're empty. They aren't covered with any hieroglyphs. There's no artwork, there isn't any clothing laying around, no jewelry. It's quite odd. It's just simply bare. As you walk down the 20 steps towards KV55, you'll notice only a few markings on the entrance. Markings that show that the entrance was once widened since it was first cut, along with its ceiling being raised slightly higher. So adjustments were made at some point. This wasn't a forgotten project by any means. The only hint as to who or what is buried here is remains on the walls. One hieroglyph was found in 1907. One hieroglyph, that's it. And it translates to, "The evil one shall not live again." Okay, so we should leave this alone, right? Yeah, you agree? Hit that thumbs up if you agree. I feel like we agree. Number 4. Ankh-Mahor curse. The walls of some of these tombs have warnings from the gods. One warning trespassers that the gods will wring their neck like that of a goose. That's a pretty good warning. I don't know. If I walked into somebody's property now and it said trespassers' necks will be wrung out like a goose, I'd turn around. You got me. You don't need a beware of dog sign. We're all set with that. You don't need to be an ancient god to get that message across. Just don't break into people's stuff. Don't steal stuff. Inside the found tomb of Ankh-Mahor, a pharaoh official from 4,000 years ago, a curse was written on the walls. It was buried in Mastaba. It was an above ground massive tomb, and this warning was the first thing you saw. "Might do against this, my tomb, the same shall be done to your property." It also warns of Ankh-Mahor's knowledge of secret spells and magic, and it threatens to fill impure intruders with a fear of seeing ghosts. Again, there's that or beware of dog. You can pick which one you want to put in front of your building. What's more impactful for your property? You decide. Number 3, 2020 tombs. 2020, okay, while most of the world was stuck inside watching documentaries, more than 100 sealed coffins were found. And yes, this time they were occupied. Gross. Found, of course, in Saqqara, Egypt, Egyptian archaeologists have never been more excited, which is a weird thing to say after what I just said. Maybe we'll find the body of Cleopatra. Wouldn't that just be dandy, I guess? The fact that we found over 100 of these still in great shape is mind-blowing. It's actually pretty awesome. Grave robbers have been around since ancient Egyptian days, and for all these to be untouched for this long, that's good. This is great. I'm glad we found it instead of, pirates. The findings date back to 712 BC, which was a period where Egypt was controlled by foreign civilizations, like Persians or Greeks. The idea that we're finding mummies is great and all, but again, do we really need to open them up? Do we need to find Alexander the Great this badly? Like, what is he? It's gonna be bones. It's gonna be goop. Like, we're willing to disrespect this many souls in the process. It's kind of ironic. I don't know. Number 2, Black Tomb. We found a mysterious black granite tomb in Alexandria back in 2018. I remember this trending because I made several Brendan Fraser jokes on Twitter. Yeah, a lot of mummy talk happening that weekend. Things got real when the cousin of antiquities minister opened it up. Yeah, we just opened up a mysterious black granite tomb just because we're curious cats. When archaeologists found this massive untouched tomb, untouched for over 2,000 years, might I add. On one hand, that's a feat in itself, historical, great, discovery, awesome. But us humans, we have to just open it up and take a peek and just smell whatever's inside. Let's just do that, I guess. Maybe it's Alexander the Great, who knows? Egyptian news outlet El Watan reported that the tomb was lifted only a few centimeters before every official involved at the construction site fled the scene. They straight up ran away, it smelled that bad. Mustafa Waziri, Secretary General of the Supreme Council of Antiquities, the guy put his entire head in the tomb to make sure that it's safe. I mean, or you could just do this with your hand. That works. Why your head? Like, just do one of these. I mean, I get it. The guy's OG. Nothing ended up happening, I think. I don't know. Number 1, King Tut. One of the greatest mysteries is, of course, the history of the young King Tut. Really young. Younger than you might think. The young boy became pharaoh at age 9 in 1332 BC. During his time ruling, the young king had to face a country in conflict. It wasn't exactly a chill time. At this point, Egypt and Nubia were going head to head over land, and not even 10 years into ruling, the young pharaoh died at age 18. It wasn't until 1922 until he was seen again. Howard Carter discovered the tomb of the lost king, appropriately, as you would have guessed, in the Valley of the Kings. This is where we could have been more careful, historically. When King Tut was discovered, they tried to move his body out of the oil that was coating the coffin after this long. But in doing so, they damaged him. They were too rough. They were too excited with this, old ass dude. So now it's next to impossible to tell what really took his life at such an early age. Yeah, we kind of blew it. We have some ideas though. It's not entirely hopeless. It's believed that King Tut had a broken leg. After some 3D scans were done, it appears the king may have not been in the best shape prior. He may have fallen off a chariot and then simply just cracked his leg and that's how he died. So if Tut passed at an early age out of nowhere, who was that tomb he was buried in really meant for? Some suggest the tomb was built for the lost queen, Queen Nefertiti, but again, still trying to figure this one out because we haven't found her yet. The former antiquities minister doesn't believe this at all. He strongly stands by his belief that the lost queen was one of the female mummies found in the Valley of the Kings. Tut passed away at 19, so many believe his own burial chamber wasn't even done being built yet, so they just threw him in hers. How rude is that? History is pretty rude. I don't know. If I can sum up history, I'd say it's rude. Yeah, that's a fair word. We still haven't found her final resting place, but with the aid of technology and 3D scans, I have a feeling we're getting pretty close.